A very hi to all the viewers. Now this is an article from the Hindu Editorial dated 1st of August 2022. An alarming fall. Opposition protest ruling parties spite have exacerbated a fall in parliamentary standards. Now this article pertains to GS2. We have so many questions in our mains examination regarding the standards of the parliamentary debates, discussions and their standards to meet out in the legislative process. Also, we would brought out different issues that the current monsoon session have seen regarding the standards of the parliament discussion and debates and the reforms that we could suggest. Now let's take a broad outlook of the history of our parliament system. Modern legislature in India evolved from 19th century when legislative councils were formed through Act 1891. Then we have legislative bodies became more representative through the Act of Government of India Acts 1919 and 1935. Then the framers of the Constitution followed the Westminster model of government, and the first Parliament of the Indian Republic formed in 1952. Now here with the Westminster model we mean that the Parliament is one of the key governmental institutions to secure all the citizens the ideals of justice, liberty, equality and fraternity as resolved in the preamble of the Constitution. But at a more functional level, the mandate of Parliament is that it is a representative body that makes law, hold the executive accountable. So our founding father wanted to give a wide representation to Indian Parliament because we were diverse in demographic. We had a rich diversity. So they chose parliamentary democracy because our forefathers did not want executive to overpower the parliamentary democracy. They keep a check on the executive. So the role of parliament is to keep a check on the executive, which is also called doctrine of check and balances. So we can say that R is a legislative supremacy instead of executive supremacy. So the mandate of Parliament is as a representative body that makes law and hold the executive accountable because the supremacy is that of the legislature instead executive. So executive has to be accountable to the legislative. Now let's understand another thing. As we all know that the three pillars of Indian democracy are executive, legislative and judiciary. Executives who implement law, as we all know that president, vice president, union council of minister, which is whose head is prime minister. Legislative, they make law, the MPs, and the judiciary who interpret laws. So here the elected representative, the legislatives will keep a check on the executive. So these legislative will make law and control the executives, and therefore executives is answerable or accountable to the legislature because in our Indian parliamentary system legislature is supreme. Once more, executive is answerable to the legislature because legislature in our Indian parliament are or is supreme. The supreme legislative body is Parliament. So as we all know that the Parliament occupies a central position in our parliamentary system. So this Parliament has a central position in our parliamentary system. Now in this article I will tell you the falling in parliamentary standards and other issues that defines the ethics of democratic system. So the writer says refrain that standards of parliamentary functioning have taken a beating in recent years. In terms of time spent on deliberating legislation, this I will tell you in detail, the conduct of fruitful debates, and in the quality of discussion and participating of expert opinion through agency of standing and parliamentary committee. This I will tell you in detail regarding the role of standing and the characteristics of agency of standing and parliamentary committees. Also, the tenure of the parliament session. Now the writer further says that disruption has become the norm, with the opposition seeking to use debates as a ploy to gain publicity. Now I have noted down few points from various newspapers to elucidate this article in much more detail. First of all, we need to understand the nature of true democracy, as I have already discussed above. Now I will club those core part with that of the ongoing development. So let's try to understand the subject and we would relate it further with the ongoing issues. So first thing that here it has been mentioned, Parliament and parliamentary norms have been undermined by the rise of adversarial politics, perceiving the opposition as an adversary rather than a partner in the law-making process. First of all, we need to understand this point works both ways. The ruling party towards opposition and the opposition towards ruling party. The ruling party needs to understand that the opposition, being a rivalry or adversarial, they provide a constructive criticism to the policies of the government and to provide an alternative route. Therefore, leader of the opposition or opposition were accorded as statutory recognition. In British political system, this institution is called as shadow cabinet as well, and therefore Ivor Ginny has described the leader of opposition as the alternative prime minister. On the other hand, let's understand the approach of opposition towards the ruling party. The nature of the opposition or the attitude of the opposition should be that the parliamentary obstructionism should be avoided. It is a weapon to be used in the rarest of the rare case, because parliamentary accountability is as important as parliamentary debate. So both should coexist. And if parliamentary accountability is subverted and a debate is intended to be used merely to put a lid on parliamentary accountability, it is then a legitimate tactic for the opposition to expose the government through parliamentary instruments available at its command. As it has been written over here, that disruption has become the norm, with the opposition seeking to use the debate as a ploy to gain publicity. So we must understand this point, that disruption is a weapon which should be used at the rarest of the rare case. When there is an issue that could cause embarrassment to the government, opposition party which are pressing for a debate under a particular rule and are not allowed to do so. So having said, these parties then claim that the only way that they can ensure accountability is to block all other business until that particular issue is resolved. And in most of the cases, this has proved to be true. Like for example, in 2G spectrum license scam, the entire session was no work and the government finally conceded to the demand just ahead of the next session. Now there is another concern, the speed with which the bills have been passed. For example, Lok Sabha on an average take less than 10 minutes and Raj Sabha passes in less than half an hour. No bill had been sent to the select committee. All this raises legitimate concern of bypassing important checks and balances in the parliamentary system. So, however, passing bill without debate in the House or scrutiny by committee, different committees I will discuss later on. Committee reduces parliament to a clearance window for legislation. When there is no healthy discussion, there should be healthy discussion, qualitative discussion. There should be qualitative question hours, which actually put or question clause in the bill. So, in that case, if that process has been bypassed or the bills has been passed quickly, So this gives a clearance to the legislation process. This effectively means that Parliament was neither fulfilling its function of deliberately lawmaking nor holding executive accountable, because democratic accountability demands that the executive decisions be subjected to legislative scrutiny. This could only be possible if the bills has been properly discussed with the ruling parties as well as the opposition in the parliament or in the Lok Sabha or Raj Sabha. Only then we could give wide representation to each and every section of the society. Because as we know that parliament was always intended to function as a body that keeps executive in check, and how when all MPs exercise accountability on behalf of the people they represent. Questions and debates are the tool used for this purpose. So questions and debates are the tool to keep a check on the decision of executive. Now, according to the PRS legislative research, only 25% of the bills introduced were referred to committees. So here, the Parliament's key responsibility is to serve as a body of oversight over the executive has been negated. Parliament has to ensure that the executive acts within the contours and approved policies and laws. So it would be wise if these bills have been passed through different committees which have so much significance and they go through quality check. We would see further that what are the roles of different committees, what are their significance. So in the nutshell, with time, with the increase and the magnitude of complexities of modern administration and time constraints, it is not possible for members of parliament to scrutinize all policies and legislation on the floor of the house. So forming small groups of members, which is called committee, to examine the subject would ensure deeper discussion and debate. So parliamentary committees, in another way we could say that they are mini parliament, helping parliament to scrutinize legislative and executive action. So we can say that they act as a link between parliament and people on one hand, and on the other hand between administration and parliament on the other hand. And a very important term that unlike Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, parliamentary committees are not governed by whip system, and hence an individual MP can echo their respective views without fear and fervor. So committees have cross-party representation and a great platform for consensus building. The government must also work to strengthen the committee system, which is in itself a consensus building platform. So let's have a quick look. We have already read this in our polity that there are broadly two kind of committees, standing committee and ad hoc committee, and there are different departmental related committees like committee of DRS are mapped to specific ministries and examine their performance, budget, associated bills or subjects specific to ministries. In financial committees scrutinize the expenditure of the government, and select committee are temporary committees created to evaluate specific legislation, whereas administrative committees are responsible for ensuring the smooth functioning of the parliament. So now we have seen that the significance of these parliamentary work happens through committee and in a very large and unwidely to examine all important issues in detail. Therefore, our parliament has formed several committees to look into specific issues and report back to parliament. Another major role of these committees that they provide a forum for engaging with various stakeholders and experts. They invite written feedback, may also invite a few stakeholders for oral testimony. In this way, the performance of committee is mixed. And a very important significance of these committees that the individual can also engage with these committees when written memorandum are invited from the general public experts, organization or interest affected by the issues under consideration of the committee, or when they are invited to tender oral evidence before the committees. For example, in 2018, a Vice Chief of Army told the Parliament Standing Committee on Defence that 68% of the equipment is in the vintage category. The committees also make an on-the-spot visit with a view to obtaining first-hand information with respect to the issues under the consideration. So now we have an overall view how committees are important for the legislation and in the process of lawmaking. So it is right that the bills should pass of their respective committees. So in the end, I would like to quote a statement by Brooke, which you could write anywhere in your answer writing, or you can use it. A few of the extract you can use it in your answer writing, that Parliament is not a congress of ambassadors from different and hostile interests, which interest each must maintain as an agent and advocate against other agents and advocates. But Parliament is a deliberative assembly of one nation with one interest, that of the whole, where not local purpose, not local prejudice out to guide, but the general good resulting from the general reason of the whole. You choose a member indeed, but when you have chosen him, he is not a member, but is a member of Parliament. So this was all about this article. I hope this video was found informative to you. Please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much.